Good evening, Julien. How is Paris this beautiful evening?
Good morning, Max. Paris is great. I feel good. I have had a pretty nice weekend, so, everything's fine on my side. But I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, I believe this is your turn on the couch. So I'm thinking you probably had a bad recent experience.
I had a bad follow-up to a wonderful experience. Or wonderful, a good experience. The reason I'm qualifying wonderful is this is all related to a funeral.
Okay. So the word wonderful is very interesting. Good
the
pick
word
here.
Wonderful is a little bit tough, but my dad passed away actually a few years ago. He was 98. There's nothing tragic about this. It's still hard. It's still sad. And part of that, we took a few years till we actually did the funeral. And with COVID and everything, it kind of made sense to not do anything anyway. And we finally got around to doing funeral, actually, for both of my parents. We buried them together. And because my dad served in World War II, there's a new cemetery near Monterey, which is this beautiful place to be. And it's, it's part of the Fort Ord. So it was a military funeral. And it was well done. Everything was great. We made a nice weekend out of it, spent the night that night at a place that my parents love to go. And it all worked really well. The people there were very nice. They were very accommodating. The paperwork was a little bit silly, but they helped me through that. So it was a great experience. Now it's been several months, and I received this in the mail.
Business reply mail. Did I read that right?
Business reply mail. This is their customer survey. 5 pages of a customer survey.
Of a paper customer survey, should I say?
5-page paper customer survey. Well, yes, it's 5 pages because the 6th was intentionally left blank. And it just, the cemetery honors veterans with service to our nation. There are sufficient signs within the cemetery to assist visitors. It's just, I know enough now about how few people take a 3-question email survey or link survey that this is just so far off. And I put it there, part of me was like, oh, maybe I'll do it. And then the other day, this came in, just a little postcard. And this is very, overtyped, many, many words to say, hey, you haven't filled in your survey. Would you please send us your survey? How much is this costing? And they can't get 1% response rate. They can't. There's no way. It's just an absurd ask. So, it's a short story, but it's just such everything was good. And then the follow-on is just awful, insane, pointless.
All right. Well, let's unpack that. All right. First, when did that actually happen? How many days, weeks, month ago did you actually receive the first questionnaire?
The first survey, it was probably 3 weeks from the survey to the follow-on email, maybe a month. It was somewhere in that range, several months.
So when did you receive the first one? 3 weeks, 1 month ago?
The first one, say a month ago.
Okay. All right. So second thing, 5 pages, you've shared a little sample of it. It feels like it's incredibly texty. So it's for you to unpack it, read it through, think about your answer, because it feels more like an essay than an actually true or false question.
it's at dead least a half-hour ask, because then, even though the envelope is stamped and everything, you got to put in the envelope, blah 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 blah. It's
it
just
is
wait.
stamped, so you at least don't have to run around to find an envelope and find a stamp.
Right,
You still
right.
need to find a place to post it, which, by the way, I realized not long ago that there is no easy place around my home. It's at least a 15 minutes walk for the most nearby post box, whatever you call it. All right. So at the very least, they provide the envelope, and it feels like each question is incredibly long. So is it open answers, or is it at least closed answers?
There's a mix. There's a number of, fill in the blank, or not fill in the blank, but on a scale of 1 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On a scale of 1 to 6.
Okay.
Questions 29 through 48 are on a scale of 1 to 6.
Come again?
Questions 29 through 48 are on a scale of 1 to 6.
How many questions are there?
Total is 55.
Oh, all right.
How can you possibly
even
get any useful
digitally
information
okay
out of 55 questions?
Now, honestly, have you read through the entire survey?
Oh, heck no. No.
All right. So you have not read through the entire survey. So with the limited number of questions that you've read, did you find it, assuming you had the time, assuming most people would find a way to answer the survey, do you think it was written in a way that the feedback they would get would be valuable?
I suppose so. I mean, what over the top but useful, was the signage good at the cemetery? I mean, okay, if I got lost in there, it's a big place, I could see that. Overall, how satisfied were you with the quality and appearance of the headstone? Looking back at your overall experience, which items would you have liked more information about? Certificate signed by the etc.
So here's what I'm thinking. Why do you need this kind of survey? Typically, you need this kind of survey because you want to always improve your service, right? So I'm assuming if you run this kind of survey, not only you have the survey, but you actually have people managing it to make sure they make changes on the product, the service, whatever it is, so that you take this into account and keep improving the customer journey. Now, typically, you want to do this with repeat customers because not only you want to improve your service, but also you want to make sure that people want to come back. For this type of very specific service, I'm hoping you're never going to need that ever again, but even if there are people who may need this multiple times, chances are this is so specific that it does not really depend on the customer himself. That very often depend on the person who deceased's own decision on how this is going to be managed.
Right.
So
yes, there's no. And it's a different mindset. This is a government thing. This is, we need to prove we're providing. We need to provide, and therefore we need to prove we're providing a good service. So it's a slightly different mind.
Okay.
People are. You're right. There's no return. There's hopefully no return business, or very minimal return business. Once a generation.
But then when with a typical business, so typically when you run a CX survey, as you said it, we try to get people to do 3 to 5 questions. Try to do it digitally because we know how much of a pain it is and how difficult it is to get people to respond. So with your traditional business that you go to once a month, it's difficult enough to get feedback. If it's digital, it's difficult enough to get feedback. If it's short questionnaire, it's difficult enough to get feedback. Now, they put all the chances on their side to make sure it's incredibly difficult to get that feedback. On top of that, they come up with a questionnaire for a specific type of service, which, let's face it, you don't really want to think about this every morning. You went through a very difficult experience. If anything, you'd rather leave it behind and definitely not relive the entire thing and go through every painful detail that you may have had to go through.
And there's a flip side to that, which is if you're there, like I mentioned, this was a long time coming, this funeral, so it wasn't. But there are people who die, and everyone in the family is just shell shocked. And you're going to a funeral, a few days, a couple of weeks later. How observant are you going to be about the signage? You're not, you're out of it. This is the last thing you're going to be paying a lot of attention to.
I think if I were in that business, and hopefully I will never be, but if I were in that business, the first thing I would do, probably killing the paper version once and for all, and moving to digital. Simplifying the survey, definitely. If you have that many questions, I'm guessing out of 55, there are probably 10, 15 top that are crucial. And the others is just good to have. But if that's killing your response rate, then that's definitely worth killing it altogether.
Right.
And I would think it probably would be much better ROI to hire one person to phone the customer to make sure, was everything up to your liking? Is there anything we could have done different? Kind of doing it with a personal touch over the phone over 5 minutes, touching, whatever around, just wrapping up the service, making sure you got everything that was promised, that everything worked well, but doing it personally over the phone. And maybe 50% of the people would say, I don't want to talk about it, or I don't have time, or I'm not going to pick up. But that's still 50% better than probably what they get with this system.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. If you're going to do this in-depth of a survey, make it high touch, because there's no way they're getting any kind of response rate on this that justifies the cost of mailing this thing. So why not have, I'm sure, I don't know how many veteran cemeteries there are in the United States. I'm sure there are, several hundred burials a day, if not thousands. But still, you can do maybe it's a couple people, but you just, if you get a very small percent, but you're actually getting people and talking them through it, that would be kind of a rough job to be the one doing those surveys. But
well, no, I'm thinking, there are businesses, like I'm thinking the event industry. If I'm running, for marketing purpose, we are running events all the time, right? Whether it's going to be an actual event, or an agency organizing the hotels and the trips for me, or a booth constructor building the whole structure for me. I know that in the events industry, after the events occur, they will call me up to see whether everything was fine. And that's a way to say, I was glad doing business with you. That's also a way to say, hey, I'd love for you to come back to us next time. And that's a way to ask a few questions to improve the service. If it sounds like I'm going to spend 15 minutes responding to a survey, I'm definitely not going to do it. But if they bring the personal touch to it, that we are having a human-to-human conversation, then you actually extract the answers you need in a much simpler way. And again, that's not a funny topic, so it's probably something that requires. It really feels like you're reading a contract. What you showed me earlier, it doesn't feel like anything human at all, and that's the most human type of activity that you could have with a business, right? And there's nothing human in the way they manage it.
Yeah, I agree. The form actually looks like I don't know what ballots look like in France, but the form. This on the side and the instructions on how to mark the things. It looks like a ballot. It looks like I'm voting, which is, I guess, could be worse. It could look like a tax form. At least it doesn't look like that. But
it actually reminds me more of the exam I had in university, where you had to fill definitely within the box. Otherwise it won't be counted as an answer. That's how it makes me feel.
And even I noticed on the top of every page, I don't know if I get it close enough. See there, it's got little instructions on how to mark your bubbles.
All right, so they definitely, if you're telling me it's a government, they definitely use the same stuff they use for driving license to save the cost, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there is another thing to it. When you want your customers to fill a questionnaire, there is always something between the carrot and the stick. Here, I don't see what more of a stick they could get. Apparently, sending you a reminder is the best version of a stick. But there is no carrot whatsoever, from what I understand. And obviously, again, they're not going to tell you 50% on your next package, because it doesn't make any sense at this point.
No, that's not good.
But if I mean, let's forget about this very specific topic and try to bring it to a broader conversation. If you need responses, I would say make it easy. So definitely digital, not paper, or give people the option eventually. If you can afford it, if it's not for millions of people, do it over the phone or over chat, or don't just send a survey and hope for the best. Make it short, 3-5 questions, probably good enough. 55, maybe an overkill.
Might be a bit much.
Have a carrot, kind of important. A reward of some sort, could be a contest, could be anything. It never hurts to add something. And I would say the most important one is making sure people understand what you're going to do with that data, telling them how this is going to help them improve their service, which ultimately is better for the customers, and promising that you're going to take actions on it. Because I really don't want to waste 30 minutes of my time if I don't have the feeling you're going to do something valuable with it.
Yeah, I was just checking. There's this. You can see there's all of this up front. Doesn't really say what they're going to do with it.
So there is this big blur of text at the beginning that you absolutely don't want to read, and that on top of it does not even tell you what they're going to do with the data. That's beautiful. CX at its best.
Okay, here the information collected is intended to be used in making improvements in the services which the National Cemetery or the Veteran Association, Associated Pro. Failure to finish the requested information will have no adverse effect on any VA benefit to which you may be entitled. So at least they're letting me know they're not going to take me off VA benefits if I don't. Maybe that's what it is they just maybe veterans get so many forms that they do get some kind of response rate to it because people are just programmed to do it.
Maybe that's that.
For me, the only reason, it'd be easy enough to just ignore this and laugh it off. The thing is, though, that this is my government, so 1/1000th of a penny of my taxes or whatever, but I paid for that, and I know that's pointless and worthless, and that's the only thing that really bothers me is just what a waste. There's no good that's going to come from that.
As soon as you fix your government, I'll give you the contact of mine, and then you can continue on your journey.
Sounds like a plan.
Do you feel any better about it?
I do. I'm glad we talked about it. I wasn't sure, the lead-in story was so very short. I wasn't sure if we'd have enough to unpack, but I feel like you had some good input and some thoughts, and I'm feeling inspired to see if I can figure out who's responsible for this and just send them a couple of thoughts. Maybe a survey.
Perfect.
Who knows?
Find them on LinkedIn, send them the link of the video, and see how they react to that.
There we go. Perfect.
Have a beautiful week, Max, and I will talk to you next week.
That sounds great. Your turn next week. Take care, Julien. Good to chat.
Bye, Max.